Ferrari makes a new statement after the Hamilton and Leclerc incident. Horner gets a huge payout as plans to return to F1 have been revealed, and all the latest F1 news. What just happened in Formula One will shock you. Christian Horner, the mastermind behind Red Bull's dominance for 2 decades, has officially left the team after securing a massive $100 million settlement. This isn't just another personnel change. This could reshape the entire F1 landscape. Let me take you back to where this all started. Just 2 months ago, everything seemed normal at Red Bull. Horner was leading the team that had conquered Formula One with 8 drivers' championships and 6 constructors' titles. But behind closed doors, a power struggle was brewing that would change everything. The trouble began right after the British Grand Prix in July. Sources suggest there were fundamental disagreements between Horner and Red Bull's parent company leadership, particularly CEO Oliver Mintzlaff and advisor Helmut Marko. The dispute centered around who would control the team's operations. Would it remain with Horner and Milton Keynes, or shift to the Austrian parent company? Here's where it gets interesting. Horner wasn't backing down. He pushed back hard against proposals to centralize control, fighting to maintain the status quo that had brought Red Bull unprecedented success. But this resistance came at the worst possible time. The team was struggling through difficult weekends at their home races in Austria and Silverstone. Then came the moment that changed everything. Just days after Silverstone, Horner was summoned to a meeting that would end his 20-year reign. He was informed of his removal from both the team principal and CEO positions. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just about Horner. At the same time, back at the Milton Keynes facility, other key personnel, including marketing officer Oliver Hughes and communications director Paul Smith, were also escorted from the premises. What followed was a carefully orchestrated transition. Company records were quietly updated in August, removing Horner as director from multiple Red Bull operations. Yet, throughout this entire process, he technically remained an employee. Until today. The settlement details are absolutely staggering. While the exact figures haven't been officially confirmed, industry sources indicate the agreement is worth around $100 million. This represents a compromise from where negotiations initially started, and it comes with some fascinating implications for Horner's future. The deal appears designed to keep Horner out of Formula One for the next few months. But here's the crucial part. He could potentially return before the second half of next year. This is a significantly shorter non-compete period than originally discussed, suggesting Horner's legal team negotiated masterfully. What makes this settlement even more intriguing are the potential restrictions it might include. There could be clauses preventing other Red Bull employees from following Horner to whatever team he joins next. These non-solicitation agreements are common in competitive industries, though they're notoriously difficult to enforce from a legal standpoint. Now, let's talk about what this means for Red Bull moving forward. Laurent Mekies has stepped in as the new team principal, inheriting a car that's still competitive despite recent struggles. The technical team led by Pierre Wache continues their work, and Max Verstappen remains a dark horse for this year's championship. But the question everyone's asking is whether Red Bull can maintain their winning culture without the man who built it. Horner's departure statement was gracious but telling. He thanked virtually everyone in Red Bull's hierarchy, from the late founder Dietrich Mateschitz to current leadership. Notably absent from his thanks was any mention of Helmut Marko, the advisor who reportedly played a key role in his ousting. Sometimes what you don't say speaks louder than what you do. The timing couldn't be more dramatic for Formula One. We're in the middle of a season where McLaren has emerged as Red Bull's primary threat, wielding a more versatile car that's proven competitive across different track types. Red Bull has managed 3 race wins this season, including one under Mekies' leadership, but their dominance is clearly under pressure. So where does Horner go from here? The Alpine team has been heavily mentioned as a potential destination, with speculation about partnerships involving former F1 Supremo Bernie Ecclestone to fund a potential purchase. However, Renault's leadership has repeatedly stated their commitment to Formula One, seemingly closing off that avenue. What seems most likely is that Horner will seek a return with some form of ownership stake. His experience at Red Bull taught him a harsh lesson. No matter how successful you are as an employee, you remain vulnerable when ownership decides to make changes. Having an equity position would provide the security and autonomy he clearly values. The broader implications for Formula One are enormous. Horner wasn't just any team principal, HEI. He was the second most successful in the sport's history, behind Ron Dennis. His departure from Red Bull creates a domino effect that could influence driver movements, technical staff changes, and even how teams structure their leadership going forward. For Red Bull fans, there is both concern and optimism. The team's technical foundation remains strong, and Max Verstappen continues delivering exceptional performances. But losing the architect of their golden era raises questions about whether they can maintain their competitive edge in Formula One's increasingly tight championship battles. As we watch this story unfold over the coming months, one thing is certain: Christian Horner's Formula One journey is far from over. With a $100 million war chest and decades of experience, his return promises to shake up the grid in ways we can't yet imagine. The question isn't if he'll be back, but where and when he'll make his next move. What happens when one of Formula One's biggest legends makes a critical mistake that sends shockwaves through the Ferrari garage? The recent Azerbaijan Grand Prix delivered exactly that kind of drama, and the fallout reveals everything wrong with modern F1 teamwork. Picture this: you're Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, racing for the most prestigious team in motorsport. Your teammate gives you a favor, letting you pass to chase down faster cars ahead. But when it's time to return that favor, you completely botch it on live television in front of millions. That's exactly what happened in Baku, and the aftermath is more revealing than you might think. Let me break down what actually went wrong at Ferrari and why this seemingly small incident exposes massive problems in how F1 teams operate today. This isn't just about two drivers swapping positions for 8th and 9th place. This is about trust, communication, and the psychological warfare that happens inside every F1 cockpit. Ferrari entered the Azerbaijan weekend with genuine optimism. They had dominated Friday practice sessions, locking out the top 2 positions and looking genuinely competitive for the first time in weeks. The red cars were flying, and both Hamilton and Charles Leclerc seemed poised for a strong weekend. But Formula One has a cruel way of turning dreams into nightmares almost instantly. Saturday's qualifying session became a disaster masterclass. Hamilton couldn't even escape the second qualifying session, ending up a disappointing 12th on the grid. Meanwhile, Leclerc was building toward a potential pole position when disaster struck at turn 15. The Monegasque driver lost control and planted his car nose first into the barriers, ending his qualifying before he could set a competitive time. From potential pole to 10th place in a matter of seconds. Sunday's race presented Ferrari with a damage limitation exercise. Both drivers were buried in the midfield, fighting for scraps, rather than victories. This is where the controversial team order situation began to unfold, revealing the complex psychology that governs modern F1 racing. During the race, Ferrari made what seemed like a logical strategic decision. Hamilton had fresher tires and theoretically better pace, so they instructed Leclerc to move aside and allow his teammate through. The plan was simple. Hamilton would use his tire advantage to attack the cars ahead, potentially gaining positions for the team. If he couldn't make progress, he would return the position to Leclerc. Standard operating procedure in modern Formula One. Leclerc, showing the kind of team spirit that defines great racing drivers, immediately complied. He moved over without hesitation, allowing Hamilton to slip past and begin his charge toward the cars ahead. This moment perfectly illustrated the sacrifice drivers make for team success, putting collective goals above individual glory. But Hamilton's attack on the positions ahead never materialized. Despite having fresher rubber and theoretical pace advantage, he couldn't find a way past the cars in front. As the laps ticked down, Ferrari realized their gamble hadn't paid off. It was time to restore the original running order. This is where everything went spectacularly wrong. Ferrari's race engineer delivered a crystal-clear instruction over the radio. Let Charles by. He's 1.5 seconds behind you. This is the last lap. Behind him is Hadjar by 2 seconds. Charles 1.5 behind. Let him by. The message couldn't have been clearer. Hamilton had one job: slow down, move off the racing line, and allow Leclerc to reclaim the position he had graciously surrendered earlier. What happened next became one of the most awkward moments of the entire season. Hamilton did appear to slow down. He moved slightly off the racing line, seemingly preparing to allow Leclerc through. But somehow, some way, he managed to cross the finish line still ahead of his teammate. The 7-time world champion had fumbled one of the most basic maneuvers in Formula One racing. The immediate aftermath was painful to watch. Radio silence. Confusion in the Ferrari garage. two drivers who now had to explain an inexplicable situation to millions of watching fans. Hamilton's mistake had turned a routine team order into a public relations nightmare. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur quickly moved into damage control mode. Rather than throwing Hamilton under the bus, he chose the diplomatic route, describing the incident as nothing more than a misjudgment from the British driver. Vasseur explained their original strategy, emphasizing that Hamilton had a tire advantage and the team believed he could make progress. Hamilton himself was quick to acknowledge his error. In post-race interviews, he admitted receiving the team order late and being completely focused on the cars ahead, despite knowing he had virtually no chance of overtaking them. He described lifting off the throttle and braking, but missing the timing by approximately 0.4 of a second. His apology to Leclerc was immediate and genuine. What makes this incident fascinating isn't the mistake itself, but the reaction from both drivers. Leclerc, despite acknowledging that team rules weren't respected, displayed remarkable maturity. He emphasized that fighting over 8th and 9th place wasn't worth creating drama, focusing instead on Ferrari's disappointing overall performance throughout the weekend. This attitude reveals something profound about modern Formula One. These drivers understand that individual battles mean nothing when the team is struggling competitively. Leclerc's perspective shifted the narrative from personal grievances to collective responsibility, showing why he's considered one of the sport's most mentally strong competitors. The broader implications extend beyond this single incident. Ferrari dropped to third in the Constructors' Championship, falling 4 points behind Mercedes. Every position matters in the tight battle for prize money and prestige, making Hamilton's mistake genuinely costly for the team's season objectives. This controversy also highlights the intense pressure modern F1 drivers face during races. Hamilton, despite his vast experience, was so focused on hunting down positions ahead that he couldn't properly execute a basic team instruction. The mental demands of Formula One racing create situations where even legends can make elementary mistakes. The incident ultimately serves as a reminder that Formula One remains fundamentally human despite all its technological sophistication. Million-dollar cars, cutting-edge engineering, and precise strategic planning can all be undermined by simple human error in crucial moments. Moving forward, Ferrari must rebuild trust and communication between their drivers while addressing the fundamental pace issues that put them in this position. The real story isn't Hamilton's mistake, but rather how Ferrari plans to return to winning ways in an increasingly competitive championship battle. What if I told you that the biggest story coming out of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix isn't about who won, but about who refuses to admit they lost? Lando Norris just dropped a bombshell statement that has the entire Formula One world talking, and honestly, it might be the most revealing thing we've heard from a championship contender all season. Picture this scenario. You're in a title fight, your main rival crashes out on lap 1, and you're handed a golden opportunity on a silver platter. Most drivers would be kicking themselves if they didn't capitalize. But Lando Norris? He's telling critics he doesn't care what they think about his missed chances. This isn't just confidence we're seeing here. This might be something much deeper. Let me paint you the full picture of what happened in Baku, because the context makes Norris's response even more fascinating. Oscar Piastri, who's been leading the championship battle, had what can only be described as a nightmare weekend. The Australian crashed out in the opening lap, giving Norris the perfect setup to close the gap in the standings. Instead of gaining significant ground, Norris managed just 6 points with a second-place finish, barely making a dent in Piastri's lead. Here's where it gets interesting. When reporters pressed Norris about whether he'd squandered a golden opportunity, his response was surprisingly defiant. He stated that he doesn't really care if people think he's missing chances because he's doing the best he can in every race. But there's a fascinating psychological element to this statement that goes way beyond just defending his performance. Think about what Norris actually said. He pointed out that if you look at it from that perspective, every race where he finished second or worse this year was an opportunity lost. That's either brilliant self-awareness or a concerning sign that he's rationalizing away critical moments in his championship campaign. The truth is probably somewhere in between, but it reveals something crucial about how elite athletes cope with pressure. What makes this story even more compelling is the context of where Norris finds himself in the championship fight. Max Verstappen's recent surge has pulled the three-time world champion to within striking distance, sitting just 69 points behind Piastri and 44 behind Norris. That's close enough to make things very uncomfortable for both McLaren drivers, and you can sense that tension in Norris's words. But here's what I find most intriguing about Norris's response. He mentioned that he could have ended up in the wall trying to push harder, suggesting he was actually being calculated rather than cautious. This reveals a driver who's thinking about the bigger picture rather than getting caught up in individual race results. It's either championship-winning mentality or championship-losing conservatism, depending on how you look at it. The technical aspects of what happened in Baku add another layer to this story. Norris admitted that McLaren struggled with pace and that overtaking was extremely difficult. He wasn't making excuses. He was explaining the reality of modern Formula One racing. When you're stuck behind another car, especially on a street circuit like Baku, your options become limited no matter how desperate you are to make progress. What really caught my attention was Norris's comments about Red Bull and Verstappen. He said people need to stop being surprised when they win races because they've been competitive all season long. This shows a driver who understands his competition better than the media narrative suggests. Norris recognizes that Red Bull brought upgrades to recent races and that Verstappen remains one of the greatest drivers in the sport's history. This acknowledgement of his rival's strength actually makes Norris's defiant stance more understandable. He's not dismissing criticism because he's in denial about his performance. He's dismissing it because he knows the full complexity of what he's up against. When you're following a Red Bull on track and can see areas where they're simply on another level, maximizing your own performance becomes the only realistic goal. The championship mathematics tell their own story here. With Verstappen closing in and Piastri still holding a significant lead, Norris finds himself in a pressure cooker situation. Every race becomes crucial, but so does mental resilience. His refusal to dwell on missed opportunities might actually be the psychological approach that keeps him in contention rather than crumbling under the weight of what-ifs. Looking at the bigger picture, this controversy reveals something fascinating about modern Formula One and how we consume the sport. We're so focused on individual moments and missed opportunities that we sometimes lose sight of the marathon nature of a championship campaign. Norris seems to understand this better than his critics. The real test of whether Norris's approach is working will come in the remaining races. If he continues to extract maximum performance from his machinery while maintaining this mentally resilient attitude, his critics might end up looking foolish. But if more opportunities slip away while he maintains this seemingly relaxed stance, the narrative could shift dramatically. What we're witnessing with Lando Norris might be the evolution of a championship mindset or the rationalization of a championship slipping away. The fascinating part is that we won't know which one it is until the final checkered flag falls. But one thing is certain, his refusal to let criticism define his approach makes this title fight even more compelling to watch unfold. What if I told you that one of Formula One's most experienced drivers just shut down transfer rumors that could have completely reshuffled the championship landscape? Carlos Sainz has spoken out about speculation linking him to Mercedes, and his response reveals fascinating insights about driver loyalty, contract politics, and what's really happening behind the scenes in the paddock. The rumors started swirling after questions emerged about Mercedes' commitment to their young driver Kimi Antonelli. Despite starting his Formula One career with 3 consecutive top 10 finishes, the 19-year-old Italian has struggled recently, scoring points in only 5 of his last 13 race weekends. Team principal Toto Wolff even described Antonelli's performance at the Italian Grand Prix as underwhelming, though he praised the teenager's recovery in Azerbaijan. This criticism sparked immediate speculation about a potential driver swap between Mercedes and Williams. The theory suggested Sainz could replace Antonelli at the Silver Arrows, while the young Italian would move to Williams to gain more experience. Similar to how George Russell developed at the Grove-based team before stepping up to Mercedes. But Sainz quickly dismissed these rumors with characteristic directness. Speaking to Italian media, he emphasized his commitment to Williams, stating he has a binding contract and that neither Toto Wolff nor Williams team principal James Vowles had contacted him about any potential move. He described the speculation as nothing more than rumors that he chooses to ignore. The Spanish driver's firm stance reveals something deeper about his current mindset and career trajectory. After being dropped by Ferrari to make room for Lewis Hamilton, Sainz found himself in an unusual position for a driver of his caliber, negotiating with multiple teams while some of the sport's top seats were filled by other drivers. His eventual signing with Williams represented both a step down from Ferrari's championship-contending machinery and a strategic long-term investment in a team with ambitious rebuilding plans. What makes this situation particularly intriguing is Sainz's previous relationship with Mercedes during the driver market chaos. He revealed that he spoke extensively with Toto Wolff about potentially joining the team, but never came close to securing a deal. Wolff appeared satisfied with his decision to promote Antonelli from their driver academy rather than signing an established veteran like Sainz. However, the recent performance concerns surrounding Antonelli have created an unexpected narrative tension. Formula One teams rarely make mid-season driver changes, but the sport's history is filled with surprising moves when performance doesn't meet expectations. Mercedes' reluctance to officially confirm their driver lineup for the upcoming season has only fueled more speculation about potential changes. Sainz's response to these rumors also highlights his growing confidence in his Williams project. Despite joining the team during what many considered a low point in their recent history, he's shown remarkable speed and professionalism. His third-place finish in Azerbaijan marked his first podium as a Williams driver and demonstrated the team's potential when everything comes together perfectly. The timing of this podium finish couldn't be more significant for Sainz's narrative. Starting second on the grid and maintaining that competitive pace throughout the race proved that his speed remains undiminished despite the machinery change from Ferrari to Williams. He acknowledged that this season has been particularly challenging, with strong qualifying performances often undermined by race day issues, but insisted the fundamental speed has always been present. This situation also reveals interesting dynamics about how modern Formula One contracts work. Previous speculation suggested Sainz might have negotiated exit clauses allowing him to leave Williams if top teams like Mercedes or Red Bull came calling. However, Williams team principal James Vowles firmly denied such clauses exist, emphasizing the confidential nature of contract negotiations and dismissing media speculation about escape routes. The broader context of this story touches on Mercedes' philosophy toward driver development. The team has historically shown patience with young drivers, as evidenced by their support of Russell during his Williams years and their continued backing of Antonelli despite recent struggles. However, Formula One remains a results-driven sport where performance ultimately determines opportunities. Sainz's situation at Williams represents a fascinating case study in career management and timing. Rather than accepting a potential backup role at a top team, he chose to become the lead driver at a team with clear development trajectory and genuine ambition to return to competitiveness. His commitment to this project, demonstrated both through his public statements and his on-track performances, suggests he believes Williams can provide him with better long-term opportunities than waiting for openings at Mercedes or other championship-contending teams. The Azerbaijan podium finish serves as validation for this strategic choice. Sainz demonstrated that given competitive machinery, he remains capable of fighting at the front of the field and delivering results when it matters most. This performance likely strengthened his position at Williams, while simultaneously proving to other teams what they might be missing. Looking forward, these rumors and Sainz's response illuminate several important questions about Formula One's driver market. Will Mercedes maintain faith in Antonelli's development, or might continued struggles prompt a change in direction? Can Williams build on recent progress to provide Sainz with consistently competitive machinery? And how will other teams view Sainz's loyalty and performance when future opportunities arise? Ultimately, Carlos Sainz's dismissal of Mercedes rumors represents more than simple contract clarification. It reveals a driver confident in his choices, committed to his current project, and focused on maximizing his opportunities rather than chasing potentially uncertain alternatives. In Formula One's complex web of politics and performance, sometimes the most powerful move is staying exactly where you are. Hold onto your racing helmets, because what happened in Baku might just be the most controversial crash analysis of the season. Championship leader Oscar Piastri's nightmare weekend just got a whole lot more complicated, and the finger is now pointing at an unexpected culprit. Picture this: you're leading the Formula One World Championship, heading into Azerbaijan with everything to play for. Then boom, qualifying disaster, false start penalty, and a crash that sends you straight into the barriers. But what if I told you that crash might not have been entirely your fault? That's exactly what's being suggested about Oscar Piastri's dramatic exit from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and the implications are absolutely massive. Former F1 driver and Sky Sports analyst Anthony Davidson has dropped a bombshell theory that's got the entire paddock talking, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Let's rewind to that fateful Sunday in Baku. McLaren arrived with championship dreams dancing in their heads. Both their drivers had the pace, the car was lightning fast, and the Constructors' Championship was within touching distance. Then everything went sideways faster than a car hitting the Tech Pro barriers. First, both Piastri and his teammate Lando Norris crashed in qualifying. Already, alarm bells were ringing. But race day? That's when the real drama unfolded. Piastri jumped the start, triggering the anti-stall system that left him sitting like a statue while the entire field streamed past him. Game over? Not quite. Here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. Most drivers would have thrown in the towel after such a disastrous start, but not Oscar Piastri. The Australian showed exactly why he's leading the championship by mounting one of the most aggressive comeback drives we've seen all season. Within just a few corners, he was already carving through the field like a hot knife through butter. He played it smart through turn 2, understanding that cold tires and championship points don't mix well with heroic lunges. But by turn 3, the gloves were off. Past Alex Albon, he went, then immediately setting his sights on Pierre Gasly. This wasn't just recovery driving, this was championship-level racecraft at its finest. But then came turn 5, and this is where Davidson's analysis gets absolutely mind-blowing. According to the former McLaren test driver, Piastri wasn't alone in this disaster. Nico Hülkenberg, driving the Sauber just ahead, might have unknowingly set the stage for what would become one of the most analyzed crashes of the season. Davidson's theory is pure racing psychology in action. He suggests that Hülkenberg, attempting his own overtaking move, braked incredibly late and ran extremely wide. Piastri, following behind and hunting for his own opportunity, used Hülkenberg's braking point as his reference. The problem? Hülkenberg's reference point was wrong for Piastri's car and situation. Think about it from Piastri's perspective. You're in full attack mode, championship leader or not, trying to salvage something from a weekend that's already gone completely sideways. You see the car ahead going deep into the corner, and your racing instincts tell you that's where you brake to. It's a split-second decision that every racing driver makes hundreds of times per race. But here's the brutal reality of Formula One. Split-second decisions at 200 kilometers per hour don't come with do-overs. Piastri locked up, the car refused to turn, and physics took over. The championship leader found himself passenger to his own demise, sliding helplessly into the barriers while his title hopes took a serious hit. Davidson's analysis doesn't stop there, though. He's quick to point out that while Hülkenberg's positioning might have influenced the situation, a driver of Piastri's caliber shouldn't be making these kinds of mistakes. Championship leaders are supposed to be above such errors, especially when managing a points lead with the season hanging in the balance. What makes this even more intriguing is Piastri's own response to the crash. When interviewed afterward, there was no mention of Hülkenberg, no excuses, no finger-pointing. Just pure, unfiltered accountability from a champion-elect who knows that titles aren't won by making excuses. The Australian was brutally honest about his mistakes. The false start? Pure anticipation error. The crash? Misjudging the grip levels and braking too late. No external factors, no unfortunate circumstances, just a racing driver holding himself to the highest standards even in his darkest moment. This kind of accountability is exactly what separates championship material from the rest of the field. While Davidson's analysis suggests external influences, Piastri's response shows the mental fortitude that's carried him to the top of the championship standings. But here's what makes this story even more compelling: the championship mathematics. Despite this disaster, Piastri still leads the standings by 25 points, with 7 races remaining. His teammate and title rival Lando Norris could only manage 7th place on a weekend where McLaren desperately needed strong results. The pressure is mounting, though. Jacques Villeneuve has already suggested that Piastri is feeling the weight of championship expectations, and incidents like Baku only add fuel to that fire. When you're leading the championship, every mistake gets magnified, every decision scrutinized, every theory analyzed to death. So what does this mean for the championship battle ahead? Whether Hülkenberg influenced the crash or not, Piastri has shown he can bounce back from adversity. The real test isn't how you handle success, it's how you respond to setbacks. And championship leaders are forged in moments like these. The next 7 races will determine whether this Baku nightmare becomes a footnote in a championship-winning season or the turning point where everything unraveled. One thing's for certain: Oscar Piastri's response to this adversity will define his championship credentials more than any single victory ever could.